The rain hammered against my apartment windows like bullets from heaven, each drop carrying the weight of this god-forsaken city's sins. I sat in my leather chair, surrounded by 3 monitors displaying financial data that would make most people's eyes bleed when my phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I took $520,000 from your secret account to fund my startup. You're welcome, Alyssa. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold in my hand. After 15 years of marriage, my wife had finally shown her true colors. The funny thing? She thought she was so damn clever, stealing from what she believed was my personal stash. If only she knew what she'd actually done. Well, darling, I muttered to the empty room. Bold move. That account has more eyes on it than the Pentagon. My name is Jack Turner, and I'm a financial analyst who specializes in tracking dirty money. For the past 6 months, I'd been working with the FBI on a sting operation targeting embezzlement schemes. That secret account Alyssa just raided? It was a honey trap, monitored 24/7 by federal agents. I pulled up my security camera app and rewound the footage from earlier today. There was my loving wife in our kitchen, laptop open, transferring money while talking on speakerphone, but she wasn't alone. Ronan Blake, her so-called business partner, stood behind her with his hands on her shoulders, both of them grinning like they'd just won the lottery. God, Jack's such a boring numbers guy. Alyssa's voice came through the speakers. He'll never even notice it's gone until it's too late. Ronan laughed, his hands sliding down to squeeze her waist. When we're rich and famous, you can dump his pathetic ass. Who needs a husband who can't even satisfy you in bed? They kissed then, right there in my kitchen, celebrating their theft with passion they'd never shown for their actual spouses. Yes, spouses. Ronan was married too, though his wife Jennifer had no idea her husband was playing entrepreneur with other people's money and wives. I saved the video file and leaned back in my chair. The wolf behind the abacus was about to show his teeth. My phone rang. Agent Mills. Turner, we just got an alert on the account. Someone took the bait. My wife and her boyfriend, I said calmly. I've got video evidence of the transfer and their celebration afterward. Jesus Christ, Jack. I'm sorry, man. Don't be. I've been waiting for this moment for months. When do we move? Tomorrow night. They're having some kind of startup launch party, right? Public venue, lots of witnesses, perfect for maximum impact. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Agent Mills, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. The next evening, I positioned myself across the street from the Glass House, the trendy venue where Alyssa was hosting her startup launch. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see her in her element. Her red dress, fake smile, working the room full of potential investors like the manipulative snake she'd always been. Ronan stood beside her, chest puffed out in his expensive suit, playing the role of successful businessman. If these people only knew he was a failed car salesman who'd been living off his wife's inheritance for the past 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Alyssa's voice carried through the speakers as she tapped her champagne glass, welcome to the future of sustainable fashion technology. The crowd applauded politely. I checked my watch. 8:47 p.m. Agent Mills had said they'd move at 8:50. Our revolutionary app will connect eco-conscious consumers with verified sustainable brands. Alyssa continued, gesturing to the presentation screen. Thanks to our incredible initial funding of $520,000, we're ready to change the world. More applause. Someone shouted, Where did the funding come from? Ronan stepped forward, his arm sliding around Alyssa's waist. Private investors who believe in our vision, he lied smoothly. People who understand that sometimes you have to take risks to achieve greatness. That's when the doors burst open. 6 FBI agents in tactical gear flooded the room, weapons drawn but pointed down. The lead agent, a woman I didn't recognize, held up her badge and shouted, Federal Bureau of Investigation, nobody move. The room erupted in chaos. Champagne glasses shattered on the marble floor as investors scrambled for exits that were suddenly blocked by more agents. Camera phones appeared everywhere, capturing every second of the drama. Alyssa Turner and Ronan Blake, you're under investigation for embezzlement and money laundering, the lead agent announced. We need you to come with us for questioning. I watched through the window as my wife's face went white as her champagne. Ronan tried to run but slipped on the spilled drinks, crashing into a table full of appetizers. The investors who'd been kissing their asses 5 minutes earlier were now recording their humiliation for social media. This is a mistake, Alyssa screamed as agents seized her laptop. That money was legally transferred from my husband's account. Ma'am, that account belongs to an ongoing federal investigation, Agent Mills said, appearing beside her. Any funds transferred from it are considered stolen federal evidence. Ronan finally got to his feet, his suit covered in spinach dip. You can't do this. We have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Mills replied. I suggest you use it. They weren't arrested, not yet. The FBI wanted to see how deep the rabbit hole went, how many other people were involved in what they suspected was a larger money laundering operation. But the damage was done. By morning, videos of their public humiliation were trending on every social platform. My phone buzzed with a text from Alyssa. Jack, please call me. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I deleted it without responding. The fun was just getting started. 3 days later, I sat in Murphy's Bar, a dive establishment that served as the unofficial news center for our city's gossip network. The bartender, Tommy, had been feeding me information about Alyssa and Ronan's social media meltdown since the FBI raid. Your wife's been calling everyone she knows, Tommy said, wiping down glasses with a stained towel. Trying to spin some story about being framed by federal agents. Nobody's buying it. I sipped my whiskey and watched the news coverage on the bar's ancient TV. The local business reporter was interviewing investors who'd attended the launch party, all of them distancing themselves from the sustainable fashion scandal. And Ronan? I asked. Tommy laughed. His wife Jennifer kicked him out, changed the locks, froze their bank accounts, filed for divorce. Word is she's claiming he stole from her inheritance to fund this whole scheme. That was interesting. I'd suspected Ronan had been using his wife's money, but if Jennifer was going public with theft accusations, it meant my revenge was spreading beyond my original targets. My phone buzzed. A text from Margot Vance, Alyssa's best friend and business partner. Jack, we need to talk. Meet me at Central Coffee in an hour. Margot had always been the puppet master in Alyssa's social circle, the one who whispered poison in everyone's ears while maintaining her innocent facade. If she wanted to meet, it meant she was planning something. I arrived at Central Coffee early and chose a corner table where I could watch the entrance. Margot walked in precisely on time, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor like a countdown to war. Jack, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. You look terrible. Divorce will do that to a man, I replied. What do you want, Margot? She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. I want to help you understand what really happened. Alyssa isn't the villain here. Really? Then who is? Ronan manipulated her. He convinced her that you were hiding money from her, that you were planning to leave her with nothing. She was scared, Jack. She only took the money because she thought you were going to abandon her. I studied Margot's face, looking for tells. Her left eye twitched when she lied. It always had, even back in college when she'd cheat on exams. Twitch. That's an interesting story, I said. Got any proof? Margot pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Alyssa. They painted a picture of a frightened wife being manipulated by a predatory older man, a woman who'd only stolen the money as a desperate act of self-preservation. These look very convincing, I said. When did you write them? Her eye twitched again. What do you mean? I mean, the timestamps show these messages were sent yesterday, 2 days after the FBI raid. You're trying to create a narrative after the fact, Margot. The question is why? She sat back, her mask slipping for just a moment. In that instant, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Cold calculation, the look of someone who'd been playing a much longer game than anyone realized. You always were too smart for your own good, she said quietly. Not smart enough, apparently. How long have you been planning this? Margot smiled, and it was like watching a snake shed its skin. 3 years. Ever since you advised Alyssa not to invest in my first startup. Do you remember that, Jack? You called it a vanity project with no sustainable business model. I did remember. Margot had pitched some ridiculous app that would rate people's social media posts for authenticity. I'd told Alyssa it was a waste of money. You destroyed my dreams, Margot continued. Cost me everything. My investors pulled out. My team quit. I lost my apartment. All because Alyssa trusted her boring husband's opinion over her best friend's vision. So, you decided to destroy my marriage? I decided to give you exactly what you deserved. I spent 2 years convincing Alyssa that you were controlling, that you were keeping her from reaching her potential. I introduced her to Ronan, encouraged their affair, and then suggested she take control of her own financial destiny. The pieces were falling into place. Margot hadn't just been Alyssa's friend, she'd been her handler, carefully manipulating her into making increasingly destructive choices. The FBI account, I said. You knew what it was. I suspected. You're not as clever as you think, Jack. I've been watching you for years, learning your patterns. When you started working late and taking mysterious phone calls, I did some digging. It wasn't hard to figure out you were working with federal agents. So you used Alyssa to trigger the sting. I used Alyssa to destroy you both. She gets publicly humiliated and potentially faces federal charges. You lose your wife and become known as the man who set up his own spouse for arrest. Everyone loses except me. I stared at this woman I'd known for over a decade, finally seeing her for what she really was. What do you get out of it? The company. With Alyssa disgraced and Ronan fled, I'm the only remaining partner. The sustainable fashion app was my idea anyway. I just let them think they were the visionaries. Now I'll rebuild it without their extra weight. Margot stood up, smoothing down her skirt. Thanks for the confession, Jack. This conversation never happened. She walked away, leaving me alone with the realization that I'd been playing checkers while she'd been playing chess. But Margot had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how vindictive a boring numbers guy could be. I pulled out my phone and stopped the recording app I'd been running since she sat down. That night, I sat in my apartment reviewing everything I knew about Margot Vance. If she thought she could manipulate my wife, destroy my marriage, and steal a company built on federal evidence money, she was about to learn why you should never corner a wolf. I started with her finances. As a forensic accountant, I had access to databases and analysis tools that would make most private investigators weep with envy. Within 2 hours, I'd traced Margot's money trail back 3 years and found something beautiful. She'd been embezzling from her previous startup's investors to fund her current lifestyle. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was discovering that Margot's sustainable fashion app was actually a front for a cryptocurrency laundering scheme. She'd been using Alyssa and Ronan as unwitting accomplices, planning to pin the whole operation on them when it inevitably collapsed. My phone rang. Detective Harris, an old high school acquaintance who'd become a useful contact in the police department. Jack, I've been hearing some interesting rumors about your wife's business partner, he said without preamble. Margot Vance? That's the one. Word is she's been running some kind of investment scam using multiple shell companies to move dirty money around. The FBI's Economic Crimes Unit is starting to take notice. Any chance they might want to hear a recorded confession? Harris paused. What kind of recorded confession? The kind where she admits to orchestrating a 3-year revenge plot that involves embezzlement, money laundering, and manipulating federal investigations. Jesus, Jack, what have you gotten yourself into? Nothing I can't handle, but I might need a favor. The next morning, I called Margot and arranged to meet her on the rooftop of the Meridian building, a 30-story office complex downtown. I told her I had a business proposition that could benefit us both. She arrived wearing a black power suit and her trademark predatory smile. Jack, I have to admit, I'm curious. What could you possibly offer me? Partnership, I said, walking to the edge of the rooftop. The city sprawled below us, thousands of people going about their lives, unaware of the drama playing out above their heads. Partnership in what? Your cryptocurrency operation. I know what you're really doing, Margot. The sustainable fashion app is just window dressing. You're laundering money through digital currency exchanges, using Alyssa's company as a front. Her smile faltered slightly. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sure you don't. That's why you've got shell companies registered in Delaware, Wyoming, and Nevada. That's why you've been moving money through 17 different crypto wallets. That's why you needed Alyssa to steal from that FBI account. You needed clean money to legitimize your operation. Margot's mask was slipping again. Even if that were true, you can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I pulled out my phone and showed her screenshots of her financial records. Forensic accounting is my specialty, remember? I've traced every transaction, every shell company, every fake investor. You're good, Margot, but you're not that good. What do you want? I want you to confess, on camera. Tell the world exactly what you did to Alyssa, to Ronan, to me. Admit that you orchestrated this entire scheme for revenge. And if I don't? Then I send everything I've found to the FBI, the IRS, the SEC, and every financial crimes unit in the country. You'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Margot looked out over the city, calculating her options. You're bluffing. You don't have enough evidence to convict me of anything. Maybe not, but I have enough to destroy your reputation, freeze your assets, and turn you into a pariah, just like you did to Alyssa. I could see her weighing the choices, public humiliation versus potential prison time. Finally, she turned back to me with a defeated expression. Fine, I'll make your confession video, but I want something in return. You're hardly in a position to negotiate. I want half the company, Alyssa's half. She's going to be facing federal charges anyway. She'll need to liquidate her assets to pay for legal defense. I'll buy her out, you get your revenge confession, and we both walk away with something. I pretended to consider it. That's not a bad deal, but I want the confession first. Margot nodded, and I started recording. For the next 10 minutes, she laid out the entire conspiracy, how she'd manipulated Alyssa into the affair with Ronan, how she'd convinced them to steal from the FBI account, how she'd been planning to frame them both for her money laundering operation. There, she said when I stopped recording. Satisfied? Very. I uploaded the video to a cloud server and sent copies to my email, Detective Harris, and Agent Mills. Thanks for being so thorough. Now delete that recording and let's discuss our partnership. I smiled. What partnership? I'm sending this to everyone who matters. Your confession is going viral in about 5 minutes. Margot's face went white. You said... I said I wanted a confession. I never said I wouldn't use it to destroy you. She lunged at me, trying to grab my phone, but I stepped aside and let her momentum carry her into the rooftop railing. She caught herself before falling, but the desperation in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. You bastard! You've ruined everything. No, Margot. You ruined everything 3 years ago. I'm just returning the favor. Security guards appeared at the rooftop access door. I'd called ahead and told them there might be a disturbance. They escorted a screaming Margot downstairs while I stood alone on the roof, watching the city lights twinkle in the growing darkness. 1 down, 2 to go. The next day, I orchestrated the final act of my revenge at Pioneer Square, the city's main public gathering place. I'd sent messages to Alyssa, Ronan, and all their remaining friends and business associates, telling them I wanted to make a public statement about the FBI investigation and clear the air about what had really happened. What they didn't know was that I'd also invited the media, the FBI, and Detective Harris. This wasn't going to be a quiet reconciliation, it was going to be a public execution. I arrived early and set up a portable projector and screen, the kind used for outdoor movie nights. By the time Alyssa showed up, a crowd of about 50 people had gathered, including several reporters and camera crews. Jack, what is this? Alyssa demanded, looking haggard and desperate. She'd aged 5 years in the past week, her designer clothes replaced with a simple black dress that screamed Legal Defense Fund. This is the truth, I said, connecting my laptop to the projector. Something you haven't heard much of lately. Ronan appeared at the edge of the crowd, looking like a homeless man in his wrinkled suit. His wife Jennifer had taken everything, house, cars, bank accounts, even his expensive watch collection. He was staying at a cheap motel and driving a rental car that had seen better decades. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced to the crowd, thank you for coming. My name is Jack Turner, and I want to tell you a story about betrayal, manipulation, and justice. The first video I played was Margot's rooftop confession. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she admitted to orchestrating the entire conspiracy, using Alyssa and Ronan as pawns in her 3-year revenge plot. That's not true, Alyssa screamed. Margot's lying. She's trying to frame us. Is she? I asked, switching to the next video. Security footage from my kitchen showing Alyssa and Ronan celebrating their theft of the FBI money. Their intimate conversation played through the speakers, including Ronan's crude comments about my performance as a husband. The crowd murmured, and several people started recording with their phones. This was exactly what I'd hoped for. Viral humiliation on a scale that would follow them for years. You recorded us in your own home? Alyssa asked, her voice breaking. I recorded thieves in my home, I corrected. Big difference. Ronan tried to leave, but found his path blocked by curious onlookers. This is harassment. You can't do this. Actually, I can. Everything I'm showing is legally obtained evidence, unlike the money you stole. I played more videos. Alyssa's group chat messages where she called her friends pathetic losers and bragged about manipulating me for years. Ronan's voicemails to other women, proving that Alyssa wasn't his only affair. Financial records showing how they'd planned to use the stolen money to fund a lifestyle of luxury while leaving their spouses with nothing. The beautiful thing about being a forensic accountant, I told the crowd, is that numbers don't lie. People lie, but money always tells the truth. That's when Detective Harris stepped forward with 2 uniformed officers. Margot Vance, you're under arrest for money laundering, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit fraud, he announced, placing handcuffs on a woman who'd just arrived at the square. The crowd erupted in cheers and camera flashes. Margot had apparently come to try to stop my presentation, but instead walked right into a police trap. This isn't over, she screamed as the officers led her away. You'll pay for this, Jack. I already paid, I replied, with 15 years of marriage to a sociopath. Alyssa was crying now, her makeup running down her face in black streams. Jack, please, I'm sorry. I made mistakes, but I love you. We can work this out. Love? I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. You mean the love you showed while you were with Ronan in our bed? The love you demonstrated when you stole $500,000? That kind of love? I was confused. Margot manipulated me. Margot gave you permission to do what you already wanted to do. There's a difference. Agent Mills appeared beside me. Mr. Turner, we need to discuss the status of the investigation. Of course. I turned back to the crowd and the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming today. You've witnessed something important, the moment when actions finally have consequences. I looked directly at Alyssa and Ronan. You thought I was just a boring numbers guy who would never fight back. You were wrong. I'm a boring numbers guy who knows exactly how to destroy people financially, socially, and professionally without breaking a single law. What happens now? A reporter shouted. Now? Now they get to live with the consequences of their choices. Alyssa will face federal charges for embezzlement. Ronan will face charges for conspiracy and fraud. Margot will spend the next decade in prison, and I'll go back to my quiet life, knowing that justice was served. I packed up my equipment while the crowd slowly dispersed, everyone talking excitedly about what they'd witnessed. Several people approached me to shake my hand or offer words of support. As I walked away from Pioneer Square, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The wolf had shown his teeth, the hunt was over, and the pack had been scattered to the winds. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Mills. Impressive work, Turner. Ever consider a career change? The Bureau could use someone with your skills. I smiled and typed back. Thanks, but I think I'll stick to numbers. They're much more predictable than people. Behind me, I could hear Alyssa still crying, still trying to convince anyone who would listen that she was the real victim in all of this. But nobody was listening anymore. Her audience had moved on, just like I had. The rain started falling again as I reached my car, washing the city clean for another day. I drove home through streets that looked exactly the same as they had a week ago, but felt completely different. I was no longer the betrayed husband hiding in his apartment, plotting revenge in the darkness. I was Jack Turner, the man who'd outplayed the players and won a game I never wanted to be part of. And that was enough.